My name is Jake. I'm 38 years old, a staff sergeant in the United States Army, and until recently, I thought I had everything a man could ask for. A beautiful wife, two amazing kids, and a life built on trust, sacrifice, and love. I met Emily when we were 17. She was the smart, quiet girl in my English class, always scribbling in a journal or reading some novel while the rest of us were just trying to pass. I fell for her before I even realized what was happening. We started dating during senior year, and I still remember the way she cried the day I told her I was enlisting. She didn't want me to go, but she never once asked me not to. That's what I loved about her. She never stood in the way of what I believed in. We wrote letters back then, long ones. This was before smartphones and FaceTime. She waited for me through basic, through my first deployment, through all the lonely months and uncertain nights. When I came home after my first tour in Afghanistan, I asked her to marry me in the airport parking lot. I didn't even have a ring. She said yes before I finished the sentence. We got married the next weekend with just our families around. It wasn't a big wedding, but it was everything I needed. We settled into a rhythm that worked for us. I'd be home for a stretch, then gone again. She handled things at home like a champ. Budgeting, fixing things around the house, raising the kids. She managed it all while I was halfway across the world. When I got back from Iraq in 2013, I told her it was time she followed one of her own dreams, so we opened a little bakery in town using my re-enlistment bonus. It was her dream, not mine, but I was proud to build it with her. I even helped out when I wasn't on base. The place was cozy, small, but people loved it. She had that warm energy that made people feel welcome, like every regular was part of our extended family. We had 2 kids by then, Daniel and Lily. They were my entire world. I'd come home and fall asleep with both of them piled on top of me on the couch. We'd do pancake Saturdays, backyard soccer, movie nights in a blanket fort. From the outside, we were picture perfect. And for a long time, I believed we really were. I believed we were solid, that no matter how much time I spent away, no matter how hard things got, we were one of the few couples that would make it. She'd always say, "You and me, Jake, always." I held on to that like it was gospel. I never questioned her, never doubted her. She was the one person in this world I trusted blindly. That was my first mistake. But back then, I didn't see it coming. I didn't see the signs. All I knew was I was in love with my wife, and I believed, deep down, with everything I had, that she loved me too. Turns out, love isn't always enough. Not when someone's already made room in their heart and their bed for someone else. Or in my case, 2. I don't know exactly when it started, when things began to shift, but looking back now, the signs were there. They weren't loud. They didn't scream in my face. They whispered, almost kindly, like slow poison dripping into my daily life while I kept smiling, clueless. I'd just returned from a 6-month deployment in Kuwait. It wasn't my first, and it probably wouldn't be my last, but it had been one of the harder ones. Not because of the conditions, we'd seen worse, but because for some reason this time I felt different. I missed home in a way that clawed at me. Maybe it was my age, maybe I was just tired. 38 isn't old, but in Army years it starts to feel like it. I kept thinking about Emily, about the kids, about the smell of coffee and cinnamon rolls in our bakery, about my daughter's laugh and my son's questions. I came back with a fire to make the most of every moment, but the house felt different. Not colder, not empty, just off. It started small. The first night back, I hugged her, kissed her deeply, held her longer than usual, and she pulled away a little too soon. Said she was tired, jet lag, kids wore her out. I believed it. Of course I did. I didn't think anything of it, but it kept happening.
I'd reach for her in bed, and she'd turn away. Said her back hurt. Said she wasn't in the mood. "You know I missed you, just not tonight." At first, I thought she needed time. We'd been apart. Maybe it was weird for her to have me suddenly there again. But 2 weeks passed. Then 3. The bakery became her excuse. She was always exhausted. She'd started hiring extra help while I was away, some guy named Nick who managed deliveries, and another part-time baker named Sean who worked mornings. She talked about them casually, at first. Then one day I walked in around 4 p.m. hoping to surprise her. The place was closed, doors locked, lights off, her car out front. I stood there knocking, texting, calling, no answer. 10 minutes later, she came out the back door, flushed, wiping her hands on her apron like she'd just cleaned something. She said she didn't hear the phone. Said she'd been deep cleaning the freezer. I laughed, kissed her cheek, told her she was amazing for working so hard. I didn't press it. I didn't want to seem controlling, but something stuck with me. I went to the bakery the next morning, unannounced again. This time I met Nick. Young, tall, cocky grin, the type of guy who calls everyone man and won't break eye contact. He looked at me like he knew something I didn't. Emily brushed in 10 minutes later and introduced us like it was no big deal. She touched my shoulder but didn't kiss me. I tried not to overthink it. A few nights later, I found her in the living room late at night texting, face lit up by her phone. She didn't hear me walk in. When she noticed me, she jumped a little and turned the screen off. "Who's that?" I asked casually. "Lily's teacher." She lied, without blinking. Said she was texting about a school fundraiser. But I knew Lily's teacher, and she'd never messaged that late. I didn't say anything. I just nodded and went to bed, feeling something twist in my stomach that I couldn't name. She stopped asking me about my day. She stopped talking about hers. Dinners became quiet. Intimacy vanished completely. One night I tried to initiate something more, reached for her in that familiar way, and I wish I could say there was one moment where everything became clear, some undeniable proof that smacked me in the face and forced me to wake up. But the truth is, it happened slowly, like a puzzle building itself in the shadows, until one day I finally stepped back and saw the whole rotten picture. It started with a receipt. I wasn't snooping, at least not intentionally. I was doing laundry, same as always, and one of her jeans pockets had a folded receipt in it. I nearly tossed it without a second glance, but the name of the restaurant on it caught my eye. It was a high-end place, the kind you reserve for anniversaries or proposals. We'd only been there once, years ago. I opened it. 2 entrees, wine, dessert, and a timestamp from a Thursday night when she told me she had to stay at the bakery late to deal with equipment issues. No mention of a business dinner. No reason for a fancy place. My chest tightened, but I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more. Something that could kill all doubt. So I waited. I watched. I started making notes in my phone. Times, dates, excuses. I didn't want to believe it, but my instincts told me to document everything. Then came the messages. I used to trust her completely, but now I couldn't look at her phone without seeing it as a locked vault. So I found another way. I remembered our shared iPad. She used it sometimes for recipes, and years ago it was synced to her Apple account. I hadn't touched it in months. I dug it out of the kitchen drawer, charged it, and sat in the garage alone with a beer while it lit up and began pulling in messages from her iPhone. I didn't even know it would still do that. I wish it hadn't. Her texts were there, just some, not all, but enough to make me feel like the floor dropped out from under me. There were conversations with someone named S, and another saved only under a heart emoji. I opened the one with the emoji first. It was Nick, the same cocky delivery guy from the bakery. He wasn't shy. "Last night was insane," one message read.
I can't believe you did that in the front seat. She replied, "You bring out the worst in me." I scrolled down, my hands shaking, and saw dozens of photos. None fully nude, but enough. Her in that lingerie. Her in the bakery, late at night, biting her lip. Then I opened the thread with S. It took me a second, but the details lined up. Sean, the part-time morning baker. His messages were different, less aggressive, more emotional. I hate pretending we're just coworkers. You're all I think about. And her replies? God, I can't stop. I know it's wrong, but it's like I'm addicted. That word, addicted, stabbed me deeper than anything. Not just once, twice. Two men, different kinds of affairs. One raw and physical, the other romantic. She hadn't just cheated on me, she'd compartmentalized me. She'd built entire other versions of herself for them depending on what they wanted. And here I was, changing diapers, cooking breakfast, working double shifts at base, and then helping her restock flour at the bakery when her back hurt. I sat in that garage for hours, reading, rereading, letting it crash over me like a slow tsunami. The timestamps overlapped. There were nights she'd be with Nick, then text Sean sweet nothings the next morning, some days both. One of the texts even referenced it. Sean had written, "I hate that you saw him last night," and she replied, "It meant nothing, I promise. You're different." I couldn't breathe. I don't remember falling asleep, but I woke up out there sometime around 3 a.m., still gripping the iPad like it owed me an apology. The next morning, I didn't confront her. I couldn't. The kids were up early, and she was making pancakes like everything was fine. I stared at her across the table while she laughed at something Daniel said. That laugh? God, I used to love that sound. Now it made me sick. I spent the whole day in a daze, pretending, planning, collapsing inside while everything on the outside looked normal. She kissed my cheek. I let her. She called me babe. I answered. But I knew. I knew everything. And worst of all, I knew I couldn't keep pretending for much longer.
I think I rehearsed it in my head 100 times before it actually happened. The way I'd confront her, the questions I'd ask, the look I imagined on her face when she realized I knew. In my imagination, I was calm, controlled, maybe even cold. But when the moment finally came, none of that happened. I didn't plan for it, didn't choose it. It just exploded. It was a Saturday morning. The kids were at a sleepover. She was home. I'd spent the night before wide awake, lying next to her while she slept peacefully, breathing steady like nothing in the world was wrong. My hand was inches from her back. I could have reached out and touched the skin of the woman I'd built my entire adult life around, but I couldn't. I felt sick. I felt like I was lying next to a stranger. Around 10 a.m., she said she had to head to the bakery to sort out invoices. I followed her there. Not right away. I gave her 20 minutes. Then I parked a block away, walked up the back alley, and waited. I knew what I was doing. I knew where the spare key was. I knew where the cameras were, and where they weren't. I didn't expect to catch them. Not that day. But I did. I walked in through the back, and the first thing I heard was laughter. Male. Then hers. Then silence. Then a soft moan. My heart went still. I didn't rush. I didn't yell. I just walked, slow and quiet, toward the front of the shop where the office was. The door was half open. And there she was. Emily. On the little love seat we bought from Facebook Marketplace years ago, straddling Sean. His shirt was off, hers was halfway unbuttoned. They didn't even hear me at first. I stood there, watching, just long enough to burn it into my memory. Then I pushed the door open hard enough that it slammed into the wall. They both junked. She screamed. Sean nearly fell over trying to pull his pants up. I didn't say a word, just stared. Her face went pale. She opened her mouth and closed it again. "Jake," she finally stammered, reaching for me like that would undo what I just saw. It's not... Don't, I said. My voice sounded dead in my ears. Don't insult me like that. She froze. Sean tried to speak, but I cut him off with a look. You, I said to him, pointing, leave, now. He hesitated, looking at her like she could protect him. She said nothing. So he grabbed his shirt and shoes and left, eyes down, head low. I stood there for another 10 seconds, letting the silence fill the room like smoke. Then I looked at her. Really looked at her. And I didn't recognize the woman standing in front of me. How long? I asked. She didn't answer, just started crying. How long, Emily? Months, she whispered. Since before you got back. That word hit me harder than the image. Before, meaning while I was deployed. While I was out there in the heat and dust and danger, she was here, playing house with someone else. Nick too? I asked, and her eyes widened in shock. That was my confirmation. She didn't need to say it. Her silence told me everything. I nodded. The pain wasn't sharp. It was dull, and deep, and permanent, like a crushed bone that never set right. Do they know about each other? She shook her head, covering her mouth. Jesus, Emily. I turned and walked out. I didn't slam the door, didn't shout. I just left. Drove until I didn't know where I was going. Ended up at a gas station 2 towns over, sitting in the truck, staring at nothing, trying not to vomit. I called my buddy Travis, another Army guy. Didn't tell him everything, just asked if I could crash at his place for a night. He said yes. I stayed in his basement that night, scrolling through old pictures of me and her, wedding photos, hospital photos when the kids were born, that weekend at the beach where she wore the blue sundress and said it was the happiest she'd ever felt. I looked at her eyes in those pictures. I searched for clues. I found none. Either she changed, or she'd always been capable of this and I never saw it.
I wish I could say that after everything blew up, I felt free. I wish I could say I walked away stronger, that I had left her behind without a second thought and rebuilt my life like some goddamn movie hero. But that's not how real life works. Real life is slower, messier. It bleeds in places you didn't even know could hurt. The days after the confrontation blurred together. I stayed with Travis for a while, long enough for Emily to finally realize I wasn't coming home. Not like that. She kept trying to reach out. Voicemails, emails, texts. Some were apologetic, some were angry, some were desperate. She even had the audacity to send one that said, "We need to think about what's best for the kids. Please stop avoiding me." Like I was the one who destroyed the family. Like I was the coward. I didn't respond. Not for weeks. I focused on the kids. I saw them as often as I could. We met at neutral places. Parks, diners, the library. I never told them the full truth. Not yet. They're too young to carry that kind of weight. But they knew something was wrong. You can't fake peace around your own children. They feel the shift. They hear the silence between words. Lily asked me one night, "Daddy, are you and Mommy mad at each other?" I didn't lie. I just said, "Mommy and I are figuring some things out, sweetie. But we both love you. That's one thing that will never change." And I meant that. I didn't hate her. I hated what she did. I hated the months of betrayal, the years of pretending. But the woman I loved, the version of her I built in my head, she was already gone. I mourned her, like a death. Quietly, alone. I filed for separation first. I didn't tell her, just did it. Had the papers served. She cried when she got them. Told me we should do therapy, that she wanted to fix what we had. That she made a mistake. But you don't accidentally fall into 2 different men's arms over and over again. You don't accidentally lie to your husband's face while you're sleeping with someone else in the office of the business he helped you build.
That's not a mistake. That's a decision. I found out later through small-town whispers and mutual friends that she kept seeing Nick for a while after I left. Then Sean. Then apparently both of them found out about each other and everything exploded in her face. I didn't gloat. I didn't care. By then, I'd already started the hard part, rebuilding myself. I extended my leave from the Army, went to see a counselor through Veterans Affairs. I talked, really talked, about the anger, the shame, the humiliation of being the last one to know, about the fear of starting over at 38 with a broken home and no compass. I worked out every day. I stopped drinking. I started waking up before sunrise again, not because I had to, but because I wanted to take control of something. I began writing letters to my kids, ones they'll read someday when they're old enough to understand. Letters about love, mistakes, pride, pain, and how even when someone breaks your heart, you don't let it define who you are. Emily eventually stopped texting. The bakery closed 6 months later. She said she couldn't manage it without me, financially or emotionally. That part hurt more than I expected. That was something we built together, a dream we shared. Now it's just another dead storefront with a faded sign and memories behind locked glass. A year passed. The pain dulled. I moved into a smaller place, closer to base, got promoted, started coaching my son's baseball team, took my daughter to ballet every Tuesday. Life didn't magically fix itself, but it became livable. And that's something. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about her. Not with anger, not with longing, just with silence, like a scar you forget until your fingers brush over it. She was my whole world, and now she's just part of my past.